Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. If you could start taking your seats, please. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. If you have a spare seat next to you, how about if you have two seats next to you? You could raise your hand and someone looking for two seats. If anyone has two seats empty at their table. Maybe in the back here. There's one here in the front. Does anyone have one seat next to them free? Oh, there's a couple of singles. If you're looking for a single, look out in the crowd for these hands. All right, we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Let's get excited. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone to the first ever APDA Research Symposium. Who's excited? I'm so excited. I'm so glad you could all join us. For those who have been hearing APDA and wondering what our acronym stands for, it's the American Parkinson's Disease Association. Everyone commit that to memory. There will be a test later for what APDA stands for. We're the Northwest chapter. We're super excited to have everybody here. If you have not found a seat here in the main room, there is an overflow room here off to the side. So my name is Susie, and I'm going to be your MC today. They said, who wants to MC? And no one raised their hand, so here I am. I'm super excited. I am on the board of directors for APDA. I have known about Parkinson's as long as I've known my husband. He's been living with Parkinson's for 23 or 4 years now. He was diagnosed at age 33, right when we started dating. So I have grown and aged with him through this process and understand the value of the information that you're going to receive today. We have a really terrific turnout. We want to welcome all of those of you who are joining us online, wherever that may be. Hello out in the World Wide Web. And we have an amazing slate of scientists here today. We're super fortunate here in the Northwest to have such incredible access to so many great thinkers and people who are involved in the wellness and daily lifestyle decisions that are made by patients and caregivers. It should be a very interesting and informative day. I want to introduce a few people, and I want to apologize also for my glasses going up and down because I'm now at the age where I need glasses to see out, but not to see down, so there might be some of that happening. But a big round of applause for our executive director, Jean Allenbach. She's the queen of APDA for us. Jen Gillick is our program director. This is her baby today, putting this together for us. Kirsten Richards is our Director of Development over here on the side. She's going to tally up all of our donations at the end of the day. Thank you, Kirsten. And Allison Paytosh, she's our campaign manager in the back of the room, I think. Still at the booth. Allison organizes our walk, among many other things, so you'll be seeing Allison later today. A huge thank you to our sponsors, without which we would not be here today. Our gold sponsor is Niagara Water. Silver sponsors are AbbVie, Boston Scientific, Inland Northwest Research, Lundbeck, Selkirk Neurology, and US World Meds. As well as we want to thank our exhibitors and sponsors in the lobby, and also all of those of you who chose to donate by clicking that extra button after you registered for today's event. It was not required, but many of you gave a donation, and we thank you so much. I now want to introduce briefly Jen, who we just mentioned, Jen Gillick, and she's going to share some information about our day. Jen.
Glasses, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Wow, I'm so pleased to see such a full room. Nearly 2 years ago, I had this idea for an event solely about just Parkinson's research. I thought it would be kind of amazing to bring people with Parkinson's together and their families along with the researchers to just talk about what's going on in Parkinson's research. I thought it a good idea. I ran it by our team at APDA. They thought it was a good idea, but we didn't know if anybody would come. And now I look around the room and see this amazing room full of people and more watching online. I walk through a lobby packed with sponsors who have financially supported this event, and I am at awe with the amazing slate of presenters that are going to be here talking to you today. My hope is that you will come away and leave this event feeling strength by being around all this amazing community of people and feeling optimistic about the work being done to fight this disease. After all, strength in optimism, hope in progress, they're not just words that live under our logo. They are words we believe in and we weave into everything that we do. Our mission at APDA is right up here on the board. It is to provide support, education, and research that will help everyone impacted by Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest. APDA Northwest is embarking on our 35th year as a local chapter of the American Parkinson's Disease Association, which is the oldest grassroots Parkinson's organization in the country. As a local chapter of a national organization, we work to assess local needs and raise funds to provide innovative programs and services, and also we have access to top-notch national experts, educational materials, and fund critical research projects. APDA's purpose is twofold: to provide help for today and hope for tomorrow to those living with Parkinson's disease. We provide help for today through support, education, and programs to help everyone impacted by Parkinson's, such as free educational materials to those impacted by Parkinson's and to healthcare professionals so they can hand it out to their patients. We have direct patient service programs like our Ride Repay and our Caregivers Day Off programs. We have a community grant program to fund health and wellness opportunities, and numerous educational events like the one here today. We provide hope for tomorrow by funding research. We are the only local Parkinson's organization that funds research. We are the sole funder, thank you, Susie, of the Washington State Parkinson's Disease Registry, whose purpose is to make research happen faster by connecting people with Parkinson's to the research community. They have a booth here today in the lobby, and you'll hear more about them, so please stop by. APDA proudly invests in the most promising clinicians and scientific projects focused on the discovery of the causes and finding a cure for Parkinson's disease, also fighting it. APDA has been a funding partner in almost every major Parkinson's breakthrough for the past 55 years, including the development of carbidopa-levodopa, the most common drug therapy for Parkinson's. APDA's focus is to bring the best new talent to the field of Parkinson's disease research through a variety of grant programs, including the prestigious COTSIUS Award, which is a 3-year fellowship grant that was recently awarded right here in the Northwest to Dr. Vivek Uni from Oregon Health Sciences University. In fact, over the years, APDA has invested almost $1.4 million into Northwest Parkinson's research because we have an amazing community of researchers right here in the Northwest. Which brings us to today and our event. Today, we will provide you with a greater understanding of what participating in research looks like and communicate information about local opportunities. By giving you the chance to hear from and meet the researchers, we hope to answer your questions and clear up any mysteries surrounding clinical trials and participating in research. We have an amazing slate of presenters today. But before I introduce our first speakers, I'd like to share with you a 3-minute video which will highlight APDA's research priorities. Thank you so much for being here. We hope that you have an amazing day.
The American Parkinson's Disease Association is the largest grassroots organization dedicated to fighting Parkinson's disease. APDA is committed to scientific research and is proud to have been a funding partner in most major Parkinson's disease scientific breakthroughs.
APDA has been involved in funding research for Parkinson's for many years, but the role is becoming increasingly important. 2 factors are really driving this. One is that it's becoming more difficult to find research money from other sources. The other is there's tremendous excitement in the field of Parkinson research.
APDA has been really instrumental in supporting my research over the years. The very first grant that I ever received was from the APDA. It really jump-started what my laboratory has been focused on for the last 10 years.
What APDA really did for me is really initiate my research. It really provided the seed to really kind of get me going and to allow my research to grow.
We think it's really valuable to bring the best and brightest minds and the best and brightest ideas to the study of Parkinson's. And APDA has and continues to play a very important role in that process of trying to identify promising new ideas and promising new people.
APDA has developed a truly unique funding program through which many APDA-funded researchers have successfully leveraged their findings to secure multi-million-dollar grants through the National Institutes of Health and other funding partners.
I would say the goal of APDA's funding program is ultimately leveraging. We are looking for our investment to turn into a much larger return.
In Parkinson's disease, I think we're at an exciting precipice where we have the ability to take some of the ideas and concepts that we've identified in the last decade of research and bridge them into meaningful disease-modifying therapies that either slow or halt disease. In order to do that, we have to get through the next push of research and do this correctly and as quickly as possible to bring these new strategies and therapies to patients.
I can't even imagine what it would be like going through this without knowing there were some amazing, talented, brilliant people on the research side that are looking to make a difference and move that research needle to making big strides.
Parkinson's disease is an extremely complicated disease, but we are on the cusp of finding some major breakthroughs in terms of treatments, perhaps the cause, and ultimately the cure.
So now is the moment to invest more, to push harder to find the cure.
APDA works tirelessly to help more than 1 million Americans with Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest in the face of this chronic neurological disorder. APDA provides the support, education, and research to help everyone impacted by Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest, and we depend on the generosity of donors like you. For more information on how you can support our mission, please visit apdaparkinson.org.
There we go. Sorry. Wanted to call out just a couple of things. You all have an event program on the table, and there's speaker biographies in here if you want to learn more about each of our presenters. There's also a section for notes towards the back if you want to scribble down some notes. We wanted to also point out just a couple of housekeeping items. We have the restrooms are in the back here in the corner as you're coming in. We'd like to ask you to silence your phones. We know there's a few exceptions to that rule for those who have timers on their phones for medications, but if we can otherwise have you silence your phones, that would be terrific. And I failed to mention that we have a special guest with us here today. In addition to our local staff with the APDA, we have a national member with us today. Rosa Pena is here from Los Angeles. She's our Director of Programs and Services, also our field operations. Where is Rosa? In the back, in the blue. So welcome, Rosa. Sorry, I failed to mention that. We're excited to have you here. Let's see here. Have we done all of our housekeeping? Yes. One last point is that on your tables you have a survey, and they're actually really important. There are some people who take surveys and don't take a second glance. We actually dive through, look for your comments, and try to continue to improve the programs that we're bringing to you. So take a moment towards the end of the day, if you would, to fill out a survey for us. So let's get down to it. I'd love to welcome our first researchers to the stage to talk to you about the history of research. Dr. Pinky Agarwal is a movement disorder neurologist and researcher at the Booth Gardner Parkinson's Care Center at Evergreen Health, and Dr. Lori Mishley. Dr. Lori Mishley is a neuropathic physician at Seattle Integrative Medicine and researcher at Bastyr University here locally. I'd like to welcome Dr. Agarwal and Dr. Mishley.
Welcome to, can you hear me back there? So people at the back, can you hear me? All right. So, you know, clinical trials are nothing new. Clinical trials have been ongoing since a long time ago. So even back in 500 BC, we did have clinical research in which, you know, the various foods and herbs that were used at that time, people tried to figure out if they were useful. And over time, at that time, they didn't have placebo-controlled trials. Over time, we have perfected and we've changed the way in which we do research, but research has been going on for a very long time now. So over time, what happened was that research was going along. There weren't so many regulations. People were kind of just trying it. Then World War II happened, and as we know, you know, there was a lot of tragedies, a lot of rules broken during that time, including in clinical research. And there was times when research was done, people were tested on without their permission. And so after World War II, there was a bunch of trials, and this was across the world, that people came together and brought in this big thing about consent, where it has to be informed consent, where people know about the risks and benefits of the research that they're entering into, and that there should be independent bodies reviewing the research. So now, any research is submitted to something called an IRB, or an Institutional Review Board. Now, this is an independent body, meaning they are not related to the sponsors. They are different from the people conducting the study and obviously from the people participating. So this is an independent body, and it is composed of some scientists, some community members, such as yourself, sometimes even some religious personnel are allowed to be in the committee, and that is if there are ethical or religious concerns. So this institutional board of people, independent, reviews the whole protocol, reviews the research plan, and comments that yes, this is safe for the patient, this is ethical, this is not putting the patient at some grave harm. And only after the IRB approves a trial can a trial go forward. And any time after the trial is started, if there is some change in how the trial is going to be conducted, that needs to be approved by the IRB. So some common questions that come up in trials while people participate in research, and hopefully during the course of the day you'll get answers to some of them. One is, why a placebo? And what is a placebo? So basically a placebo is a substance in the trial that doesn't have the active ingredient. Also, it's called the sugar pill. So now why do we even have placebo? Why not everyone have the active drug? Well, just because if everyone knew that they were taking the active drug, which obviously everyone's hopeful will work, then the participant feels better, the person who's conducting, the physician who's examining you, he's hopeful that it'll work. So in general, the results will look more positive than they may be. So that is why, to have this element of no bias, we have a placebo in which no one knows. The patient doesn't know, the researcher doesn't know, so that it can be an unbiased opinion about how the drug works. Now, one of the questions is, why me? Why am I being made the guinea pig? Well, one, it's not lab research that most of you will participate in. So the trial, before it comes to human phases, it's gone through the lab phase, it's gone through the animal phase, it's gone through various phases. There's been a lot of safety testing done on it. And there's one thing that only, one phase of research that only can go forward is if a Parkinson's patient participates in it. Meaning you can have healthy volunteers, you can have safety data. However, whether the medication is effective for the condition can only be tested in patients with Parkinson's disease. So it's not really, am I a guinea pig, but can I contribute to the development of a new drug, being aware that there are enough safety protections that are inbuilt into the system. So then, why me? Because there are so many trials that are wanting participants, that there are so many medications that are waiting to make it from the lab on the pharmacy shelves. And the more patients that participate, the faster those drugs can make it to the market. So as a clinical trial participant, you do have access to top-notch researchers and clinicians, and all of this is typically at no charge to you, because most of the time the sponsor who is testing the product is the one who's paying for the care. Now, the phases of a clinical trial, it moves from lab to first in human trials. In first in human trials, typically you're testing it in healthy volunteers, and you're trying to make sure that it's tolerated okay, that it doesn't affect the liver adversely, that it's tolerated by the kidneys okay, the blood stays okay. After that, you typically test it on patients who have the condition. So it would be tested in a small number of patients who have Parkinson's, and then you test that, yes, it is tolerated well with the patients who have the condition. So first you tested it's safe for healthy volunteers, then you tested that it's safe for people with the condition, and then last of all, you are testing it in a double-blind fashion to make sure it is safe as well as is effective. And then sometimes people feel, when I come to the clinic, I can just be seen every 4 months. And now there are so many visits, and these visits are so long. And why is that? Well, because the meds you're taking in the clinic have gone through this long process. And so we know how safe they are. And people have used it over time, so they know how to monitor it. But when there's a new drug, then you need lots more testing. You want to check the liver, you want to check the blood, you want to check the EKG, you want to check blood pressure, pulse, heart rate. You want to make sure everything is okay, and that is why the research visits need to be long. Oftentimes, the research visits are also long because you want to check how long it takes for the blood levels to rise and to get eliminated. So sometimes there'll be lots of blood draws in which after you take the product there, and then they draw the blood levels. They draw multiple blood levels to make sure, to check how long the product actually stays in your system. Now, most of the times you won't need multiple pokes. Sometimes they can put an IV line in and just draw blood from there. So what can be some of the possible side effects? Well, the side effects will always be possible, known side effects will always be stated in the informed consent. And you will always be given a copy of that informed consent at the beginning of the trial. The purpose of the long visits, the purpose of calling you so often is to capture any possible side effect you may have. So it's a good idea. You know, your study team will always give you a number that you can call them at, and that's generally accessible 24 hours. So if you have a side effect, let them know. And all of the sites that are doing the trial actually share this information with each other. So if someone here in Washington gets a side effect, if there's a site in Miami doing it, they'll be exchanging that information. So the sponsor will let them know. So we won't be blindsided that, okay, this side effect was happening and we didn't know about it. So what if you get side effects? You would let your treating doctor know, and they will treat. Now, one of the questions that comes about is, what about who'll pay if I get side effects? Well, most of the times, this will get paid by the study sponsor if it's related to the study product. And so this will also be spelled out in the informed consent. And then one of the things is, if I participate now, is it going to take like 10 years, 20 years before the product comes to market? Well, things have gotten streamlined over time. And actually, things are moving along at a pretty fast clip now. So there are the phases, this whole phase from preclinical to phase 4, meaning preclinical, it's in the lab, phase 1, healthy volunteers, phase 2, tested in people with the condition, phase 3, again, testing, double blind. Phase 4 is when it's already available in market, meaning even after the new drug gets approved, FDA continues to monitor the safety of the product. And so for several years after a product is approved, there'll be phase 4 trials in which we deal with real life experience. How are people dealing with this medication in real life? And even if there are any side effects, they do get reported to the FDA. So potential new medicines, it actually takes more than $1 billion. The average is $2.6 billion for a medicine to make it from the preclinical phase to the study approval phase. And that's not counting the money spent on the drugs who don't make it all the way. So this is an expensive proposition people are talking about. So volunteers are needed so that now obviously if a study is going along and they're investing all these billions of dollars and they can't find participants to participate in the trial, there's only so much money people can have, so some of those trials will just close, and then the drug won't go to market. So at the center of this is the patient, and you're surrounded with the safety net during a trial. And the safety net includes the IRB, the FDA, the other sites, as well as the sponsor who has a medical monitor, who, if there's a question, your treating doctor will talk to the medical monitor who's working at the sponsor's company. So there's a FOX Trial Finder. And this is a website or a link where you can go and register. And this tries to match you up with various clinical trials. So if you go in and enter your data, they try to match you up with trials that are going on anywhere in the US and locally, so that you can then decide if you want to enroll in it. We also have a Washington State registry in which you can enter your data, so that if there's a local trial, it'll match you up with it. So these are some trials that actually have gotten approved. We just did the trial a few years ago, and the drugs are already available in market. There might be some of you in the room who've participated in trials with these drugs, and in front of them, you know, they were able to exit the trial, and a few months later, they were actually able to take these medications by prescription. So it's actually not that long before a medication goes into trials and can come to market. So I'll end with this. I'll talk more about these in the afternoon session. But one of the things in this slide, you'll find that there are several patients. Though 60% of Parkinson's patients expressed an interest that they wanted to do clinical trials, less than 10% actually did. And so if only 10% of Parkinson's patients participate in trials, we have 90% who don't. And there are large amount of clinical trials that do not meet their numbers. So hopefully, during the course of today, you'll find some of your questions and concerns about participating in clinical trials answered. And with that, I don't want to encroach on Dr. Michelle's time, so.
Thank you. So many of you know me. I didn't exactly follow the rules in terms of sticking with the topic history in research. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just say, you know, for those of you who don't know me, the thrust of my research is nutritional strategies for neuroprotection, right? Some dietary stuff, some supplements. Are there modifiable things in your lifestyle that are affecting the rate of Parkinson's progression? Well, we cannot do placebo prayer. We cannot do placebo workout. I can't give a quarter of this conference real steak and real milkshakes, and you guys in the back get fake steak and fake milkshakes, and you get real salmon and real broccoli, and you get fake salmon and fake broccoli, and we do this for 20 years, and we look to see if progression is different between you, and neither you nor I know who's eating what. There are some times and some places where double-blind placebo-controlled trials are not possible, they're not practical, they're not feasible. And with it taking $1 billion to bring new therapies to market, there is no broccoli farmer out there who's in a position to help fund that kind of research. So I came to research from National Institutes of Health, offered a research grant to train more people in the complementary and alternative medicine field to do research, because it's not just that we don't have therapies, we need to improve the way we do research and evolve the idea of study designs. There have to be different ways to ask the question that get us a legitimate answer. So the first thing I really want to talk about is the role of placebo in Parkinson's. As Dr. Agarwal said, placebo is a huge problem in any study. In Parkinson's disease, it is especially an issue. Before we knew that dopamine had anything to do with motor function, we knew that dopamine was part of the pleasure pathway. As soon as you get excited, as soon as you get hopeful, I mean, just signing up to be in a study and feeling like you are contributing, you're already making more dopamine. And guess what? That improves your symptoms. And this is a unique challenge and opportunity, challenge for researchers and opportunity for patients to how can we, one, use that to your advantage, but for researchers, it is a huge problem, right? Because as soon as you sign up, your symptoms are better before you've even taken your medicine. Dr. Kapchuk is a Harvard researcher and clinician who has done amazing research on the power of placebo. couple years ago, he published a study. I have no idea how he got this funded, but he let people with back pain come into a study, and they were randomized, picked out of a hat, and they either got their conventional course of care, physical therapy, pain meds, massage, whatever they were doing, or he said, you have been randomized to receive a placebo sugar pill. And the choice was go about your business, do what you're already doing, or go about your business, do what you're already doing, and take a fake blank sugar pill. Guess what? The people taking the sugar pill got way better than we didn't even have to lie. There is no need to mislead. We can tell you this has nothing in it. This is just sugar, and it improves your symptoms. The act of opening the pill bottle and putting the pill in your mouth makes your symptoms better. In fact, this is probably ruining a huge portion of my career right now, because we have now done 2 studies with intranasal glutathione. I studied there's a molecule we all make, it's called glutathione. People with Parkinson's have a glutathione deficiency, and what we want to know is, can we give you glutathione and improve your outcome? So we did a small study with NIH, and we compared intranasal glutathione 2 doses to placebo, and you can see the dotted lines on the bottom. In the first study, the people with the intranasal glutathione did quite a bit better with than placebo. Michael J. Fox Foundation said, you know what, that's too good to be true. Do the exact same study again, and let's see if you can reproduce those findings. We did the exact same study. We said in advance, we will call this a success if the intranasal glutathione arms get a 4-point improvement on the UPDRS scale. We got our 4-point improvement, but now there was so much excitement. We were turning people away for this study. We now have 2 medicines that work, intranasal glutathione and intranasal saline. So the problem here is, obviously, I'm a believer in evidence-based medicine. We need science. We have to have academic integrity when we're evaluating whether a medicine works. I do not want to be charging anybody $300 a month for sugar pills, right? So we design these studies, but here's where that starts to break down. Is as soon as we do a randomized controlled trial, there have to be really strict criteria for who's in that trial, right? And so what happens is we start filtering out the people who have depression, the alcoholics, the people with dementia. And that makes for a really tight, clean study. And when that study is over, we can tell you, you know what, drug A did do something that the placebo did not. But the problem is we have now filtered down the population that I'm not sure reflects the population we're hoping to serve anymore. And so this is where there is no right or wrong answer. They serve different purposes. So I'll just give you some other examples. We have never done a double-blind placebo-controlled trial of smoking. Like, we did not take 1,000 high schoolers on graduation and have 500 of them start smoking a pack a day, 500 of them smoking fake cigarettes, and we follow them to see who gets lung cancer. Right? We've never done that study for a whole bunch of really good reasons. But yet we all believe that smoking is linked to lung cancer. So my point here is, just because you don't do a double-blind placebo-controlled trial doesn't mean that you can't get the answers you're looking for. This is a study that was in British Medical Journal saying that there's never been a double-blind placebo-controlled trial on whether or not parachutes work. So when we're studying neuroprotection, what I would like to argue for is more pragmatic clinical trials. So there are essentially, when you're designing a study, we have to choose 2 different study designs. An explanative trial is what you want if you want to understand the mechanism of action. A pragmatic clinical trial is what you want if you want to know if it's going to help the people in this room. And we need them both. One is not better than the other, but they serve us differently at different points of the process. And so I have devoted my career to pragmatic clinical trials. And these are better when you have slowly progressing diseases and a really what we call a heterogeneous group, a tremendous amount of diversity in the group. And I'm going to argue that we can use that diversity to our advantage. So this is why it matters, is right down to when I sit down to design the study, I have to decide, what are my goals? Do I want to understand how this works, or do I want to understand if it translates to people who have this disease? And so when I'm if I want to know how it works, I look at DAT scan transporter activity. I look at changes in levodopa in your urine. There are a whole bunch of things that we can do to understand the mechanism of something. If I want to understand if it helps you, we ask questions like, how's your tremor? How are your bowels? How's your quality of life? How's your fatigue? And the problem is we have a lot of things that we don't understand, but not a lot of it translates. So I'm pushing towards a translation to more pragmatic clinical trials. If we are recruiting for an explanative study, there is nothing better than twins, right? We want you guys to be as similar as possible. In an ideal setting, we would recruit people who, for all practical purposes, live the same, they're the same age, they're in the same income bracket, they eat the same foods, and the only difference between them is someone's taking the red drug and someone's taking the blue drug. That is the dream for an explanative study. For a pragmatic study, the dream is let's just look at all of you and find out who are the people who aren't progressing and what are you doing differently. So that's what we have done. We've developed an outcome measure called the ProPD. We have cards at the back. It's a free measure. You can get it yourself. It takes 5 minutes online. And there are 33 common symptoms of Parkinson's. We ask you to rate each of your symptoms based on how well you think you're doing. If you don't have the symptom, you hit to the left. If you have the symptom and it's severe, you click the bar to the right. And we add all of those scores up. And what we have learned is those scores correlate beautifully with quality of life, with mental health, with social health, with physical capacity. So what's really nice about this patient-reported outcome is it's free. You can do it from your own house without a trip to the doctor's office, and it correlates with the existing measures that we use in clinic in terms of the conventional rating scales and quality of life. So what we've started doing is looking for who are the non-progressors and what are they doing differently. And we've already started publishing. The people who aren't progressing as fast, they have the same diagnosis you do, but the people who remain in excellent health with few symptoms for 15, 20 years are eating more fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds and fish. The fast progressors are drinking more dairy, they're eating more beef, they're eating more fried foods, more soda. So that's how we're starting to use the diversity to your advantage. There's this thing happening right now called comparative effectiveness research, which I find absolutely fascinating. It is really hard to compare what your movement disorder specialist does to what your acupuncturist does, right? Apples and oranges, but they both are helping in some way, shape, or form. So what we're starting to do now is on these surveys, we ask you all kinds of questions about your behaviors, your food, but we also ask you, where are you getting your care? And I know this is gonna ruffle some feathers, but I am really excited to do that. We are starting to look at which clinics are getting better outcomes than other clinics. We ask everybody every 6 months, in the last 6 months, do you believe your disease has gotten better, getting worse, or staying the same? And we can now we almost have enough data to say, hey, here's how UW compares to OHSU. Oh, look, here's how my clinic compares to their clinic. And what I'm working towards is a way where we can be more transparent with the outcomes that we're getting, put you guys in the driver's seat, and clinicians can start to learn from one another, and we can highlight the people who are doing having unusual success with their practices. So in conclusion, I just want to say this is a beautiful lecture or article that was just out. If you don't follow Ben Stetcher's blog, Tomorrow Edition, I recommend you do that. But he just had a great interview with Dr. Lee, who says, you know, we have been doing all of this explanative research for the last 40, 50 years. We've put billions of dollars into understanding Parkinson's disease, and it's not translating to disease-modifying therapies. Maybe the way we're going about this research needs to be rethought.
Thank you so much. We have time for just a couple of quick questions. We do have some roving microphones out in the audience somewhere. Is that correct? Those people. So if someone has a question, you can raise your hand. right behind you. She has a microphone.
My question is, do those people who participate in trials ever get to know what they just did? I mean, is there a time period after which they're determined to be a placebo or a real drug?
So I think the question was that people who participate in trials, do they actually ever get to know if they were on the placebo, right? So yes, they do. And what happens is that you don't, as soon as you exit the trial, you don't find out about it. But when the last person exits from the trial, then you do get an official letter saying what you got. And obviously, we don't let you know during, which we ourselves don't know, is so that you don't bias in the middle of the trial the findings.
I'll say that was the big difference between our glutathione trials, too. The first trial, we got our results, and we said, hey, we want you guys to know your results. We're going to have this impromptu potluck and give you your results. So everyone got their own data. When we did the second trial, during enrollment, we said, at the end of this, we're going to have a big potluck, and you guys will be the first to know. People canceled their trips to Hawaii to make it to the potluck at the second story. So.
That's amazing. Another question? Go ahead.
If you participate in a trial for a new drug, do you have to stop taking what you're already taking?
So I think the question was, if you start participating in a trial, do you have to stop taking the meds you're already taking? So the answer is the meds generally just have to be stable during the course of a trial. So most of the times you need to be stable on drugs for approximately 30 days. In some cases, it'll be 90 days. So as long as your meds are stable during the course of the trial, you don't need to come off meds. Now, sometimes there will be some disallowed meds, but as long as everything's stabilized before you enter into the trial and minimize changes during the trial.
Go ahead.
Dr. Bishley, when's your new book coming out?
I spend all my time here doing things like this. We're 196 pages in, hopefully by the end of the summer.
We have time for just one more. Go ahead.
Is it true that the placebo effect is particularly strong in studies for Parkinson's disease as opposed to other neurological disorders?
So the question was that in neurological conditions, is the placebo effect stronger than others? So the placebo effect can be pretty strong. And actually, there are some conditions in which it's stronger than Parkinson's, like headache, trials with headaches or tics. Those are notorious. Like sometimes the placebo effect can be like 40%. In fact, they're so beneficial, one wonders why you actually need any effective treatments at all. So in Parkinson's, when people take placebo, it actually can promote endorphin or dopamine release in the brain, which gives a sense of well-being, which can contribute to that placebo effect. Nowadays, there's also a term called the nocebo effect, in which if suppose we know that a patient's going to get a drug, but they think, I'm not getting the drug, I might get the placebo, they may actually get less benefit from the active drug because half of the mind thinks that they might be getting the placebo. So that's called the nocebo effect now.
No, the nocebo effect is a really big deal, and you know how we're using that clinically. I've met some other researchers who are clinicians who, when they're giving Botox, they'll go through the list of potential side effects, but say, come back in a week. Because if you just give people a week to let the dust settle, they have fewer of the side effects than if you go through a list of side effects and then give it. And just to the idea about how strong is the placebo response in Parkinson's, these Italian researchers are doing fabulous research, and they took people who were going through deep brain stimulation surgery, and while their skulls were open, they put in some either apomorphine as a Parkinson's med or a placebo. And if people had never had apomorphine before, they had no response. the more doses of apomorphine the person had had, and the more recently they had had them, when they said, hey, we're giving you apomorphine, they had the full-on response to apomorphine with saline, right? And so if you had had four doses in the week prior to DBS, and we said, hey, we're giving you apomorphine now, everyone's tremor calmed down. It was just amazing. And so this idea that you can brainwash yourself and get some symptomatic effect is really clinically relevant.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I am not a researcher, but I would like to summarize by saying maybe we'll just put, there's placebo in everyone's water today. Thank you, Dr. Mishley, and thank you, Dr. Agarwal, so much. I want everyone to know that we're running just a smidge behind, which is good news. That means that we're all getting fantastic information. We've left quite a bit of time pre and post lunch, so it's not going to eat up any of our time for our speakers. And there will also be a nice break after our next session, so hang in there with us if you would. I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Kimmy Sue, Senior Movement Disorder Fellow at VA, Puget Sound, and the University of Washington. Dr. Sue, join us on stage, and she will also be joined by 3 clinical coordinators and research participants who will introduce themselves for this panel. Thank you so much. You need to hold it quite close. I hear.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the symposium. It's a beautiful day outside, so that means a lot, especially in the Seattle world. And thank you, APDA, for hosting such a wonderful event. So this is a unique part of the symposium. This is your first-hand chance to ask research coordinators in the local area, as well as 3 patients who have gone through research studies, ask them the questions about how it's been going through a research trial. And some of them actually have been through several research trials, so they have a lot of experience. So ask questions. We're going to make this nice and laid back. Any question you have, feel free to raise your hand. And we have people with microphones who will be running around getting the microphone to you so you can ask your questions. And can you hear me in the back? I know the microphone is a little bit soft. So are we good in the back? Great. Excellent. So I feel very far away from you all. Let me get closer if I can. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so we have a wonderful panel of 3 research coordinators. I'll list their names and then they will introduce themselves. And then again, 3 wonderful patients. So the 3 clinical coordinators are Krista Spector, who is from the VA Puget Sound, Melissa Bixby from Inland Northwest Research in Spokane, Washington, and then Dr. Sudeshna Ray at Evergreen. So I'll have first Dr. Sudeshna Ray, since she's nearby. Oh, I see. We only have the microphone up here. I guess, can we pass it around? Perfect. The trick will be to, oh, there we go.
So, hi, good morning, everyone. I am Sudeshna Ray, and I am the Clinical Research Coordinator at the Evergreen Health Hospital. It's called the Booth Gardner Parkinson's Care Center. So we intend to give comprehensive care to our patients. So we have neurology, neuropsych, social workers, neurosurgery, and rehabilitative services all under the same roof. As for the Department of Research, we have various clinical trials for patients with early diagnosed Parkinson's, patients in their mid-stage, and also for the patients who have been there with Parkinson's for quite some time now. We address both their motor symptoms and the non-motor, the non-movement symptoms, that is. And I'll be happy to talk about it as we go along in the session today. And I will briefly introduce you to Deborah Sanders, who is one of our clinic patients who participated in the GOCOVRI trial, the pivotal trial, which led to the FDA approval of the drug. And then finally, it was approved in 2017. Deborah is multifaceted, and she is also an artist, I believe. Thank you, Deborah, for coming in. We appreciate it, really. And thank you, Jennifer, for inviting us over, because it's been such a pleasure and honor to be in front of such a diverse crowd. So thank you, guys. I'll move the mic over to the next person. Deborah.
Hi. Oh, no, you are. Okay. Hi. Hi, everybody. How many of you have Parkinson's disease? Okay. Bunch of us. Yeah, aren't we special? How many of you are caregivers of Parkinson's? Yeah, be nice to the caregivers, because they are the ones that count. Anyway, I started with the Booth Gardner Parkinson's Clinic, and I was very honored to have my brilliant Dr. Pinky Agarwal as my doctor. She always knows the right answers for everything. But I've been diagnosed for 16 years with Parkinson's, and it was, it was slow at first, but things got a little more progressed after a while. And my neurologist, there you go, he thought I should go to see the Booth Gardner Parkinson's Clinic, because they were up on the latest things, and it was the smartest thing I ever did. So going there, I was introduced to the Parkinson's study groups, and I had dyskinesia really bad after a few years, maybe about 8-9 years in. It got really bad, and it's very upsetting to your system to have that dyskinesia. So I was more than happy to jump into that trial, and I have a little bit now, because when I'm not in the social setting, it kind of crops in. But I was in the GoCovery trial, 2 of them, back to back, and it was a hard year after they stopped the trial, where I couldn't take my GoCovery any longer. And very happy to be back on it in January of this year. But it's really worth your while to get in there and be a participant, because it helps your self-esteem, knowing that you're doing something to help other people. And if I could get one person on GoCovery, that would be major for me. Here I am, and I am an artist, and I have continued to do my artwork. I was on hold for a while, because it's real hard to paint when you're all over the place, unless you want to do abstract. And I also make jewelry. Yes, I make jewelry with little tiny things. I wasn't going to give that up. And I like to play pool. My husband and I started playing pool, and we play like 3 or 4 nights a week. And sometimes I take my wheelchair, sometimes I take my walker. Sometimes I don't even need any help at all. I have in a wheelchair today because I had back surgery 3 weeks ago, and that went well. So happy about that. But most of the time I'm walking, but my husband, he kind of hovers. He's a hover. But you got to be careful and treat your caregivers well, because they are really the best thing for you. So, and I just want to say I'm thankful for GoCovery and for the clinic. And well, you can ask me questions if you want. I'm not shy.
Great, thank you so much. So next I have Melissa Bixby from Inland Northwest Research.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bixby. I'm here from Inland Northwest Research. I work in site in Spokane, Washington with Dr. Jason Aldred. If you guys don't know him, he's right there. Yeah. So I'm here with Bob, one of our participants in our Biogen monoclonal antibody trial. He was with us for some time in our phase 1 and phase 2, so I'm going to introduce you to him in a second. I could tell you a lot about myself, but I love being a coordinator, but really what I'd love for you guys to take from this panel is ask questions that are going to make you more comfortable with research. You're not a guinea pig. It's a very personal thing. Bob, we get to know our subjects like family. So we want you all to be comfortable, and we want you to see this personal side of this. So I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And to let you know, also Spokane isn't just some podunk town on the other side of the state. We do have patients that come from all over, from Portland, from Seattle, from Canada, Alaska. So it's a really wonderful site I work at, and I'd love to get a chance to talk to you all about it. So I'm going to introduce you to Bob.
Thank you. My name is Bob, and I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's about 2.5 years ago. And shortly after I was diagnosed, my daughter had come up from Portland and was spending the weekend with us in Walla Walla. And in the course of our conversation, I was standing in front of her. She was sitting down on a chair, and as I was standing there, my left hand started doing its Parkinson's thing. And she watched it for a moment and then all of a sudden just burst out, "Stop it! Stop it!" And don't we all wish that we could simply say, "Stop it," and it would stop? But we're not miracle workers. There's no magic bullet right now. But the reason the three participants and myself, the three of us here, are doing this is because we want a cure for Parkinson's. Anything that we can do to help bring about a cure makes our time worthwhile. When I first went to Dr. Aldred to be diagnosed, one of the questions we asked in our time to discuss options was, are there any studies going on that I can be a part of? And there were 3 studies going on that he mentioned at that point. And of those 3, we chose the Biogen study. And that was the best decision that I've made as far as the Parkinson's is concerned. At this point, I can say that I haven't noticed any changes in the 2.5 years. I know with Parkinson's, that's maybe not anything significant because things change and develop over time. But for me, it's still good news. And anything that we can do to bring a cure someday for this disease is going to make this the best thing that we can participate. We're a team. We work together as participants, as coordinators, as researchers. There will come a time when we can stop the progression, we can bring a cure, and that'll make it worthwhile for anything that we've gone through. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of what's happening in the science of Parkinson's, and glad to be able to be here.
Thank you, Bob. Great inspirational words. So lastly, I have Krista from the VA, and I'll have her introduce her patient as well.
Hi, I am Krista Specketer, and I work at the VA in the University of Washington in Seattle. I've been coordinating Parkinson's research studies, clinical, genetic, biomarker studies for the last 3.5 years. Working with the Fox Foundation. I also help with the Washington State Parkinson's Disease Registry, which the APDA sponsors, and we have a booth today if you're interested. And I don't also want to talk too much about myself. What I want to emphasize here is, again, that research participation is not this impersonal thing. We care a lot about our participants. We do see them like family. We learn about their families, what's going on in their lives. We try to stay really involved, and we care about every step of their disease process in their lives. And there are lots of different ways to get involved. We do a lot of clinical studies, so studies that don't involve interventions if you're not interested in drug trials. There are also ways to get involved that are over through the mail or on the internet if you're limited in mobility or can't get to Seattle. And we want to make all of those studies as accessible to you as possible and give you lots of opportunities. And also destigmatize some of the things that are scarier, like lumbar punctures or DAT scans. So we're happy to answer any questions today. But otherwise, I would like to introduce Skip Satterwhite. I've been working with him for the past 3.5 years, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk about his participation in our research studies.
Thanks, Krista, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. When my wife and I learned I had Parkinson's 7 years ago, we immersed ourselves in as much information as we could. And we heard about Michael J. Fox and his foundation. And although he was a celebrity I wasn't familiar with, his foundation seemed very well endowed and seemed to have great sense of purpose. I became listed in the Parkinson's disease registry, which soon notified me of Fox's Parkinson's Progressive Markers Initiative, or what is called PPMI. And they were looking for candidates who were diagnosed with PD and preferably not on medication, as well as for a cohort of healthy candidates. The study didn't include therapeutic trials. They weren't interested in products that could be ingested or used therapeutically. They were interested in information that appealed to me. I wondered to myself, what marked a person as one who would develop the disease? How can you tell if someone is going to develop Parkinson's? And then how can you confirm that they have it? So it appealed to me also as a way of confirming my illness and explaining my severe anxiety and depression, which are non-motor symptoms. So the first thing I was given as part of the program was a DAT scan, which would help to confirm the diagnosis, and which incidentally was not covered by my health care insurance. So happily I tested positive so I could be in the program. Having enrolled in PPMI, I was notified of other studies which piggybacked on PPMI. Among them the Alzheimer's Foundation, PANUC, and Outdoors for All tandem biking program, which I attended. So by signing up with PPMI, or the Michael J. Fox Foundation's program, the bells went off to a lot of other programs. You'll find if you sign up for one program, you'll start getting mail from all other interested researchers. So what did it consist of? PPMI was administered mostly at the Harborview VA Hospital, at the VA Hospital. And over a period of 5 years so far, I've taken a battery of blood tests, MRIs, Parkinson's UPDRS exams, 3 spinal taps, and cognitive tests, so they can see my progress or diminution. So this data is held in data banks at selected universities and is available to any interested researcher. I wasn't informed of the results, but in case something goes wrong, they're obligated to tell me. I have to say I've felt very pampered by the administrators, such as Krista of PPMI. I'm treated like a king when I go down there for my routine tests. And it makes it very challenging for them because their protocols are constantly having to be changed and they're having to adapt all the time. Incidentally, once a year they have a luncheon, which is sponsored by Michael J. Fox, which I'm very appreciative of, in addition to my reimbursement for parking fees.
Well, thank you all for your introductions, and special thanks to Bob, Skip, and Deborah for your discussion of your experiences with research. So now I'll open it up to the audience for questions. I'm sure you have a burning question you want to ask them. So we have microphones, and anyone who has a question, raise your hand. I think we have a hand right here in the back. Yes. Oop.
Okay. Most of these trials have age limitations. Do you know any trials that are that accept people over 85?
The question is there age limitations to the studies? Are any studies available for above 85 years old patients?
Hi, thank you for your question. And there is definitely an upper age limit for enrollment, and that's because patient safety is our main concern. So once a patient is above 85 years of age, that might make them more susceptible to a bit of more side effects and more of systemic effects. So if you are looking for a trial in particular for a particular symptom, like whether it's a motor symptom for your motor fluctuations or maybe for other non-motor symptoms like any memory problems, mood disturbances, so it kind of varies from trial to trial, because some of the symptoms are when you have Parkinson's for quite some time now, especially memory problems. So those are the kind of trials where the symptoms appear much later as you go on with the disease, might have a much higher age limit. So we literally have to look at the protocol and the age limit to be able to answer that. But definitely, yes, there is an upper age limit, but whether it's 85, 87, that or 90, that varies protocol to protocol. And any other coordinators, if have comments, I can give it.
How would you find out about trials?
Okay, can I answer?
So the question is, how do you find out about these trials?
Okay, so I can, so we at Evergreen, we have a research website, which is the evergreenhealth.com, and it has the list of all our generic trials. And to make things simpler for you, because you have made all the effort to come here, we have a booth right here where we are giving out a concise pamphlet which has a list of all our currently enrolling studies. So, and it has the age limit on it too. Most of them do have an age limit, so we can provide you at the end of the session, it has a bag, the pamphlet, and the concise leaflet, which has the inclusion and the upper age limit. So we can go over it together and see if you might be interested in any one of them. Okay?
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so
question.
much.
Yes, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease approximately 6 years ago, and I just wanted to know, I've been taking levodopa and that sort of thing. Does these drugs diminish over a period of years, and do they diminish down to just practically nothing after 10 or 15 years? Or do they keep going with it? Do they diminish, or do they keep going? Do you keep going with the drugs?
I missed the second part of the question. Are you saying the medications might not work so well if you've been off of medications for never been on medications? Is that correct?
Once you're on the trial, you're saying about the trial. Once the trial is over time, does the medication diminish? It's out of your system. Is that what you're asking? I guess how long? I guess it depends.
So I'm a little bit confused by the question, but is the question with time, can you reduce the amount of medication, or does it have less effect over time? Is that correct?
I think that's
okay. Who would like to address that question?
I can address.
Sure. If you, yeah.
Oh, is it okay? Okay. So, So if I understand correctly, your question is like if you are on a trial, do you need to reduce your medications after the trial is over? Is it something like that, or is it? Yeah. After the trial? Okay.
So the question is, does the Parkinson's disease medication...
I understand the question now. After the trial, and the medication diminishes in the system, is it useless to you at that point?
Oh, I see. So the trial that provides medication.
Correct.
Okay, so the question is, the trial has a medication that's given. Does it lose effect after the trial is over? Is that correct? The question? No. Kind of.
You want?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I think maybe I know where he's coming from. When I was done with my trial, I had to go off of the product until the FDA approved it. So that was hard on me because it was such a wonderful product. And so it was actually approved in 6 months, which is really unheard of. But then it was made available in another 6 months. So I was very happy to be back on it because my coordination was really off without it. And it doesn't stay in your system. It's a temporary fix, but if I didn't have all my meds, I wouldn't be walking or even out of bed. So I thank God every day that I have what's available to me. And it doesn't take any of the other meds that you take. It doesn't take any of that function away. So that's going to stay the same. And when my doctor says, try this, I do it, because I trust her. Thanks.
We have time for 2 more questions. Okay.
Speak right into it. I will. My question is for Krista. Would you address a little bit the brain donation after we all die?
Yeah, and I'll have Skip say a few words about that as well. So we do have a brain donation program at our research site, and that's for participants who are enrolled in our studies. So like the Pacific Northwest Udall Center that looks at clinical changes in Parkinson's disease over the years and looking at memory and thinking changes. So we collect a lot of clinical data about participants over the time that they're enrolled, as well as genetic data. And then kind of the last piece of the puzzle is getting the brain autopsy. And so we do enroll participants who are interested in brain donation and that are in our studies. And I coordinate that program with some of our other coordinators. And Skip has talked about being enrolled before, so I'll let him say a few words about that.
Yes, if you look in my wallet, there's a yellow card that's visible, which says, in event of death, give this immediately to University of Washington, give the specimen.
Great question. Okay, the last. Oh, great. Okay, great.
So William, participant on the overflow room A, asked if there is a way for him to sign up for studies that only interested him, like the alpha-synuclein studies, because he doesn't want to be getting a bunch of emails from other studies he's not interested in.
So the question is, can I sign up for one specific study and not get any other mailings for other studies?
Yeah, you don't want the junk
question.
mail. Yeah, actually, if there's a particular site near you that you're interested in, maybe connected with your neurologist or something in your area or in the state, usually they have those trials that you're looking for listed on their website. However, if you ever go on clinicaltrials.gov and you're looking for a specific trial, on there they'll have the list of locations of all of their trial sites and who to contact. So you can always, if you're looking for a very specific trial, again, also go through your neurologist or through their website as well.
No more? One more? No, 0?
I think we have one more question here.
One more question. Last person.
I'm really interested
in the cause of Parkinson's? The cause of Parkinson's versus treating symptoms and finding cures? And I have an interest in if you could give me an estimate of how much percentage-wise research is being done in terms of the cause. When you're talking about finding cures, our environment and the inputs that affect our lives is undergoing constant change. So without understanding basic causal actions that produce Parkinson's, it might be difficult to deal with changes in future time that might affect the process.
Great question as well. So the question is, are there any studies that look towards understanding the causes that lead to Parkinson's disease versus the treatment for Parkinson's disease? Anyone want to comment on if there are studies that look at causes more of Parkinson's disease?
So I can have Bob speak to his experience here, but the trial that he's in, the interventional trial, is not for symptom control, but really looking at the theory behind what might be the causes of PD. So that's the trial that he's been involved in for the last 2 phases, and maybe he can speak to why he decided that.
The thing I liked about the Biogen trial was that the alpha-synuclein, which I don't know if somebody will be addressing that today, the buildup of that, and the medication being tested was to break that up, dissolve it, and thus stop the progression of the Parkinson's so that it wouldn't keep spreading to the other neurons in the brain. And that sounded intriguing to me. And so that's why I chose that one. And like I said, at this point, I have not noticed that there's been any progression in the 2.5 years. Of course, you don't know whether you're on the placebo or not either. And so it's just something that maybe in time we'll find out. But at this point, I'm happy with what we've done.
And also, there's a research panel with some of the investigators here this afternoon that can answer a lot of those questions as well.
Great. So that will be the end of this part of the symposium. I'm sure if you have further questions, you can ask the coordinators who will be out in the resource fair area. And I'm sure the patients, oh, Deborah wants to say something. Great.
Hi. Well, I just want to give you my background, and I have my own opinion. I had a beauty salon for 20 years, and I did acrylic nails, and you all know it's pretty strong odors in there. There was 10 of us working, so I'll just leave it at that.
So with regards to further questions for the patients, would you be okay if someone approached you later in the resource fair if you had any more questions?
Can I comment
Yes.
on the genetic one? Because
Yeah, sure.
one more important resource would be the Michael J. Fox Foundation website. And there is actually a gene called the LRKK2 gene, which maybe, because let's see, Parkinson's as a disease, only a very, very minute percentage has a genetic predisposition. And most of it is like idiopathic. And even symptom-wise, it's not like one symptom. So it's tremor, it's the non-motor symptoms of constipation, mood changes, hot flushes. So it's a phenomena, as we call it. So it can be a little bit of genetic, but mostly it's environmental factors. So it's a lot of factors which actually may cause the disease. So if you visit the Michael J. Fox Foundation website, there are studies, because his question was specifically if there are genetic studies going on. So there are studies on the LRKK2 mutations, which you might look up. And adding to what we have already known, there is a study which is trying to kind of delay the progression of the disease, because alpha-synuclein protein is again one of the proteins which can be one of the causality for the disease, and we have an antibody which can actually work against this alpha-synuclein and neutralize the alpha-synuclein and help excrete it out of the body. So we at Evergreen is also having the same study. So it's not a genetic study, but it's a study which is something which is claiming to halt the progression. So at a very, very early stage, so the disease cannot be stopped, it cannot be reversed. The only thing this company is trying to do is to kind of slow the progression and see how it goes. So if you want to know more about it, we again have a booth and we can always connect after the session. All right? Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. More questions, just ask them. They'll be in the research foyer. Okay, bye.
Thank you, everybody. I apologize for speaking as they're stepping off the stage, but we want to stay as close to schedule as possible. We have just a couple of announcements. I also wanted to address quickly just some of the questions that I was listening to. I myself do not have Parkinson's. I am what is considered a control, and I have been in 2 or 3 different studies myself. So I think generally what we want you all to hear throughout the day from all of us is that there are studies going on all the time on a range of different aspects of Parkinson's. Some things are familial. For example, my husband has Parkinson's, and many years after he was diagnosed at age 33, his mother was diagnosed after him. So they were particularly interested in his family. In order to get information about his family and genetics and DNA, they thereby have to test it against those of us who do not have it in our families. So even if you're a care partner or an interested friend or relative, there are lots and lots of opportunities to get involved, and sometimes it's as simple as giving blood, saliva into a test tube. Who's done 23andMe or, right? We've done that to find out what our heritage is. Come to find out we can do simple things like that to help contribute to this community who needs access to this information. So again, I just want to say the Washington State Parkinson's Disease Registry is a place where you can give your name, address, phone information, and when a researcher or clinician is looking for folks at a variety of ages, regardless of age or sex or familial relation, whether you have Parkinson's or not, they're looking for people all the time. I had someone reach out to me recently, and they were specifically doing a test on how well you hear or do not hear as a caregiver with your Parkinson's, person living with Parkinson's having trouble speaking to you. So as a control, I was providing information on what it's like as a care partner and the struggles with language. So again, there's a full gamut of opportunities, and if you're interested, please do sign up. I heard someone ask about getting information on one test might make you get calls for others. And my instinct is that we all get too much junk mail, and if you throw it away, just think of those extra solicitations as reminders that someone's fighting for the cure. That's one way to think about it.